Uh, all
We
right.
are we are live.
Should be live. We should be live. So, all of you who are in that chat here, you need to let us know if you can actually see us or not. So we're not talking just to ourselves the whole time. I mean, I like talking with Christy and Deus a lot, but we are supposed to be here to talk to you. So, in the chat, can you see us? Can you hear us? Let's see. All right, you can see. All right. We are good. We are good to go. So welcome everyone to our first Story Ember panel discussion. In case you can't tell, we are super thrilled to be able to talk to you. This is like, okay, let me just say, like, launch week this week for Story Embers has just been amazing. It's been amazing to hear from all of you, either in the live chat we had going on Tuesday, or those of you who emailed us to just let us know how much you enjoy the different stuff we're doing. It's been fantastic overall, and it's definitely a highlight to be able to kind of close off this launch week here from talking with you all more about some of what we have planned here, and on just getting an opportunity to answer whatever writing questions we have and let you know how we want to help you as writers, and kind of model that live for you by just asking whatever questions you have going on at the moment. So many of you, especially those of you from Kingdom Pen, probably already recognize us. But in case there are any of those who don't know who we are or don't know quite all of what we do, I just want to take a moment for us all to just let you know who we are, what our background is, and what kind of things we're going to be doing here at Story Embers. So I'm Josiah DeGraff. I am the Story Ember Editor-in-Chief, formerly Kingdom Pen Editor-in-Chief, and now Editor-in-Chief of Story Embers, and also the Fiction Content Manager for the Young Writers Workshop. And I have been writing for over a decade at this point, and for the past several years have been doing several different things online, whether teaching courses or coaching students or running different writing websites. And I'm just really excited about the opportunity through Story Embers to be able to help storytellers of all ages learn what it means to not only tell stories for Christ, but to learn how to tell stories that are actually good and that also glorify God. So that's who I am. That's a brief note about what I'm doing. So at this point, Christy, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right. Well, I'm Christine Eaton. I'm finishing up my first year at college, and I am the art and social media director for Story Embers. So we're gonna have an art department, and we're gonna talk about that later. So I'll be running that. I love art and poetry and writing, and I'm so excited that you guys all get a share in Story Embers with us.
Thank you, Christy. And then Deus, last but certainly not least.
Yeah, okay. Well, most of you probably know me already from my articles, courses, Kingdom Pen Forum. I'm kind of doing the same thing here at Story Embers. I'm the community manager, or something like that. Basically, I just hang around and talk with people. That's all I do. I'm also kind of the jack of all trades around here, do a little bit of everything. I run Excelsior Writing School, which so far I'm teaching Show Don't Tell there, probably something else in the future. And yeah, when Josiah contacted me about Story Embers, I just love the vision and had to join on. So that's me.
Cool. Thank you. So, brief note, I know some of you were jumping in saying, I'm here at this event, but I don't know what in the world this is. What does it mean this is going to both be a launch party and a panel discussion? Some of you are like, I don't know what I just signed myself up for. So, let me just start by letting you know what you did sign yourself up for, and what we're going to be doing today. So we have two goals for today. One of the goals is we want to explain how we want to help storytellers through Story Embers. And so we're going to be talking about, what is our vision for the site, and what are the specific initiatives we have planned to help you, and talk some about things we haven't talked much about on the website. So talk some about the art department, how we want to help artists, and then also talk about the top secret guilds we've been hinting at. That's one of my favorite things about Story Embers we haven't even shared about yet. And we want to talk about what those are going to look like and what they'll be like. But we don't want to just like, and the last thing we want to do is we want to answer your writing questions. So hopefully you've brought some questions today, or even if you have not, if you have any writing questions about literally anything related to writing, whether it's something you're struggling with your story or anything else you want to know, we want to have the opportunity to answer your questions live. But we don't want to just like talk and then answer questions. We want to split up some. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to be spending some time talking about how I want to help writers with story Embers. We're going to answer a bunch of questions. We're going to talk about the art department. We're going to answer some questions. And then lastly, we're going to enter the guild, answer some final questions, and hopefully be done around 3. Although those of you who were at Kingdom Pen know that it's a relative end time. We may go over because you guys tend to ask a ton of questions. And we're like, oh, we want to answer all these questions, so we're gonna have to go over time. But it should be wrapping up somewhere around 3. So first off, then what I want to do is I want to talk some about our vision for Story Embers, what we want to do, and what sort of things we have planned. So hopefully, from our first blog post and from the homepage, you have a pretty good idea of what we want to do. We want to help and find new ways for Christian storytellers to learn how to better hone their craft. And in our mind, what does it mean to hone your craft? Well, there are 3 basic kind of traits or things that you need to do in order to become a good storyteller. First thing you need is a community. We're going to be talking about the guilds later on. This is how we want to help community, because what we think is that writers don't just need community, but you need a working community. You need a community where you're able to work with other storytellers on projects, where you can get accountability from them, where you can get support from them. And we've got some cool ideas with the guilds of how we can take a bit of a different approach to give a different kind of community that we think is going to be really helpful for you all to be able to build the type of community that's actually going to support and help you as a writer and do some neat things with that. So we're going to be talking some about that later on. Another thing that writers need is they need regular training. All right, so this is where probably most of our initiatives come in. This is where the articles that we're going to be publishing every week are going to come from. This is what the podcast is going to help you do. We're also going to be continuing to have live panel discussions on an every other monthly basis. And so this panel discussion is a bit different from most. The way that most panel discussions are going to work is we're going to be bringing on 3 different published authors and having them talk some about their experience writing, and then also answer your writing questions. You don't need to just be asking us your questions, but we want to be bringing in published authors who are great at what they do and who have certain specialties, and get them on so that you can ask them your questions on whatever you're struggling with writing. And so that's going to be one of our that's going to be kind of falling under the camp of giving you the regular training that you need to get published. And then the last thing we want to help you do is we want to help you build confidence. Because one of the things that many of us have noticed is that a lot of writing isn't just about learning how to do it, but it's about knowing that you're doing it well. And for many storytellers, it can be a struggle to know, okay, well, I've written this book, but how good is it? And how can I be sure that I'm skilled enough as a writer, to be able to go out and publish this and be able to tell a good story? And so we want to be, and so one of the things that we're working on is doing different things to help you to build confidence, and not fake confidence where you're confident, but you don't have reason to be. But we want you to build true confidence. Because we want you to help you, give you an better understanding of here is where you are as a writer, and here's what you need to do, and that you can be confident in knowing where your strengths and weaknesses actually are as a writer. So the writing craft quiz is a pretty big part of this. Is the first step. The first step to building confidence means learning where you're at. So we've got that self-assessment tool up, and we've got several other things planned, because part of as many of you realize, and we're sometimes emailing about us, is it can be hard at times to self-assess yourself. It takes a lot of room to be able to step back as an author and to know, all right, where am I and where are my strengths and weaknesses. And this was something that when we were beta testing the quiz, we were running into this, and as we were talking with some of you, that some of you, it's going to be hard to be able to accurately self-assess yourself. And so one of the things we want to do is we want to give you more tools, and we want to equip you to be able to better self-assess yourself and better understand where you are as a writer. So one of the things that we're working on is creating a sheet that you could give, say, for the beta reader of a story, where it's going to be similar to the writing quiz, but instead of asking you as a writer to self-assess yourself, we're asking the reader to self-assess the story, and start creating these types of resources so that you can be giving these to readers, and the readers can be saying, all right, here's what I thought of this story, and give it to you in such a way that you can use that to help you better take the writing quiz, and thus better help you understand who you are as a writer. And we want to do other things like that just first to help you to know, all right, where am I, and how can I be sure that I have a pretty solid idea of where I am as a storyteller. And the second main thing that we want to do after you know where you are is to give you confidence by giving you plans and resources to know how to grow in those skills. This is where, say, the Writer Rank Advancement Guide comes in. This is where the Writer's Journey Plan comes in. And we're planning to continue to expand these and to continue to develop these so that over time we're adding more resources to it. We're talking with you, learn, or what do you find most helpful at these stages, so that we can be giving you the best plans possible so that you're not only confident in where you are, but you have a confident plan to figure out where you're going. That's the basic vision and premise of Story Embers. We've got a bunch of things we want to do. Sometime within the next several months, late spring, early summer, we hope to be hosting a short story contest here where you can all compete for prizes and get published with your short stories. In case you haven't noticed, we are also accepting submissions. So we publish works of art. Chris will be talking more about that later on. Publish short stories, articles, poems. We give you an opportunity for publication. And there's a bunch of other stuff we have down the pipeline that we probably shouldn't talk about yet. But we've got pretty big plans with what all we want to do and what all we want to achieve here. Christy and Dace, is there anything else you wanted to add to all of that?
I think you covered it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just add basically that one of our big visions here is just to be the one-stop shop for you. That you're not trying to figure things out on your own. That we have a set vision for here's the steps you need to take. Everything's laid out. That you have the confidence going forward. That I know what to do. I know the steps to take. I can do this.
All right. Right. Cool. At this point, we are going to take a break about talking about how we want to help you, and we want to instead of just talking about how we want to help you, actually help you by answering the questions if you're submitting the chat. So some of you have already submitted questions. For those of you who have not, just submit the question by writing question in all caps, and then put the question. Brandon Miller, who's one of our staff writers, is running the Story Embers account, and then he'll be taking those and sending us those questions. So let's see, what is the first question we got here? First question, I'm going to direct this to Deus. Okay. How much do the guilds cost?
Oh yeah, the guilds, this is great. The guilds, they're going to be free. But they're going to be worth definitely hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars when I'm done with them. Not quite yet, but you wait and see. They're going to be great.
Yeah, so guilds are going to be free, and if you want to know what these are, we'll be talking about that later on today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next, so the next two questions I'm going to tackle at the same time because they're kind of asking the same thing. So the first question is specifically directed to me, asking what inspired me to create Story Embers, and the next question is asking, what's the difference between Kingdom Pen and Story Embers, and these are kind of related. So I'm guessing these are kind of related. So I just want to kind of answer kind of both them at once, since many of us, the vast majority of us are from Kingdom Pen, and a number of us are working both for Story Embers and Kingdom Pen. So I kind of want to talk briefly about some of that to answer your question. So I would say the basic difference, probably the biggest difference is the fact that Kingdom Pen is specifically geared for young adult writers, and Story Embers is geared for writers of all ages. So part of the difference just has to do with the fact that we're trying to aim for a larger audience here. We want to help more than just young adults with their writing. We definitely want to help young adults with their writing, but we want to be able to help some other people as well. And so that's one of the major differences. And some of it, we just have we're gonna have different focuses as a whole. So our community is going to be set up differently. Not because just because we want to kind of take a different angle of it and provide some different things. There are also some things like the writing quiz that we'll be structuring kind of large parts of this side around. That's going to be kind of different from how Kingdom Pen is structured. At the end of the day, though, I will a number of us work for both Story Embers and Kingdom Pen. I don't, but Deus does, and a number of our staff members do. And so I'd say that I would view Story Embers and Kingdom Pen as kind of sister companies that both of us want to help and support the other, and both of us have very similar visions for what we want to bring, how we want to help Christian storytellers, and what we want to do. But kind of we're kind of targeting different audiences and doing some different initiatives. So that's where I'd say are the main differences between Kingdom Pen and Story Embers on that front. Yeah, in terms of what was my personal kind of inspiration for working with a lot of other people on this team to create this. Part of it is just have an opportunity to do some new different things. When you're writing a website for a while, you begin to see, oh, well, here would be some really cool things I could do, but can't do terribly well here. And so some of it is, well, let's when you get to start something from scratch, you can lay the groundwork for different things. So it's kind of having the opportunity to kind of get a different angle on things and do stuff with that. So hopefully that answers those two questions. All right, so next question, and let me see if you want to kind of take a shot at answering this first, but I can also talk some about this.
Okay.
So the question is, the writing rank quiz seems geared toward outliners. Is there more content coming aimed more at us discovery writers? Thanks for what you guys are doing. Deus, did you have any thoughts on that?
Probably, but I should probably pull up the quiz to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Do we have that besides just on the home page, like where I can just scroll through all the questions at once?
You should have a link to that. We will be, this is for the benefit of everyone else, we will be posting we will eventually be putting the resource library, the full quiz, in case you want to kind of write your answers down, bold them so you can kind of save them or just look over them. We will have that. We don't have that currently up.
Okay. Well, I'll just do the best I can then. I think it's true to some degree that the quiz is more geared toward those who do plot. But when people ask me, well, how does plot structure apply if I don't plot, if I'm a pantser? What I say is that it applies after you write the first draft, when you go back and do revisions. So I think that can be where you assess yourself. It's not the first draft, but after the first draft. What's your plot look like when you start to revise? And the same thing, I think, with theme and in some of the other categories is that you don't have to judge yourself by the first draft, which can often be chaotic for pantsers, but it's okay to assess the second draft if that's the way you work. So hopefully that helps somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think the difference between there's three steps whenever you're writing. There's outlining, there's writing the story, and there's revising it. And in my mind, both plotters and pantsers are both outliners and discovery writers. Both of them do all three steps. It's simply a question of in what order they do them. So an outliner is going to outline first, then they're going to write, and then they're going to revise. A discovery writer is going to begin by writing, but that doesn't mean they have an outline, because if you talk to many professional discovery writers, what they do is they write and then they outline. They say, all right, with the story they wrote, what is the outline of the story they just wrote, and then they use that during the revision process. So in terms of the writing quiz, I'd say that we try to design it that wasn't specifically aimed at just outliners. I'd say that the question may be, in terms of, talking about plot structure, we are not thinking about what's a plot structure before I begin the story, but what's a plot story structure after I've finished the story, when I'm looking back and trying to figure out how this is outlined. So all it may kind of determine is just simply at which point of the writing process you find it most helpful to assess yourself and to look at this quiz. All right, so we're going to take one more question, and then Christy's going to talk some about the art department, what that looks like. So the next question is, how can I make my stories more plot-driven? A lot of my stories are focused too much on the characters' internal struggles. Dave, did you want to take a shot at this one?
Yeah, I wish I had a whole day to answer that, though. that's a really good question, and it's a really big question.
Idea.
Yeah, we should really write an article on this sometime. I might have several answers to this. One thing I would do is, if you're a pantser, I would at least try out plotting, because I think conforming to a plot structure at least somewhat helps you think about what are the actions and consequences in the story and how they all link together. So that can at least give you somewhat of a plot to work off of. I think another, what I often see in what we call character-driven stories can be a lot of, I guess you'd say, brooding, where the character is just thinking and thinking and thinking. And that can often get melodramatic when you do that. So I would tend to avoid too much brooding and have the character's internal monologue sessions kind of wedged in between action sequences. So a lot of how good writing works is it's a back and forth, tug and pull. Like, for instance, when you have a dialogue and then the internal monologue, what characters are saying between each other and what they're thinking in their head. That kind of works back and forth. You don't have 500 words of dialogue and 500 words of internal monologue. You kind of mix it together. And so it kind of works the same with character and plot, where you don't have your character here and your plot here. With good writing, character and plot are completely interwoven together. So as your character's fighting the bad guy, you can use symbolism, you can use backflashes of things that happened in the past. Maybe there's a moral dilemma involved in the action sequence. There's lots of ways you can bring in characterization during what's happening in the external world. It's the back and forth. This happens, this is my mental reaction. That would be my simplest answer, I suppose. I don't want to get too much down a rabbit trail. Maybe you want to answer something and maybe I can think of something else.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. That's a lot of the similar things that I would say. I think, like you said, there's back and forth in a good story. So the goal is, a character's internal struggle is going to determine how they respond to external struggles. But the external struggles are also going to force them, and it's going to challenge them in their internal struggles. So both of them should affect each other. So the internal affects the external, which affects the internal, and so on. And that's how we create a character arc, because we have the character making choices. Their choices don't work, and so that's going to force the character to change who they are in order to want to succeed. So if your stories are too internally focused, I'd say, well, the problem may be that there's nothing really forcing the characters to make internal change. And so maybe you use more external events to force and shape the internal change. And I'll also just mention that it kind of depends on the story, on how much you focus on both. So, one of my favorite authors is Jane Austen. Jane Austen is a bunch of internal struggle and stuff like that, way more than, say, if I'm reading the latest Brandon Sanderson fantasy novel. So it kind of depends on what kind of genre you're looking at and what you're looking for as a writer. But I'd say, along with this, think about the push and the pull and how these things can influence each other.
You stole that right from Theme Mastery.
I know. I mean, it's my course. I figure I can steal whatever I want from what I've said before and not have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Look for Theme Mastery there.
Yeah, go take Theme Mastery, people.
All right. So I know you've got a bunch of questions, and we will get to a lot more of them. But before we get to those questions, though, I'm going to turn the reins over to Christy to talk some about the art department at Store Embers and what sort of things we'll be doing through the art department.
Alrighty. We have a pretty good thing planned going on for the art department because, first of all, I believe that with art is you can definitely tell all sorts of stories through art. So I wanted to give a place where people who want to share their art and stuff can. We currently are accepting submissions for our art. As the art director, I will be the one going through all of those submissions. And so if you look on our submission guidelines, you can see kind of what we have there. I have a writing section that goes with the art that kind of explains what inspired this piece and kind of what is the idea behind it, where you can share that too with the piece. We have a lot planned. I definitely want to see articles and stuff to help artists in the near future. Probably by the end of the summer, a lot more of the art department will be fleshed out because it's still in the very new stages of a brand new website and while we're currently still focusing on writers. So if you have any questions about the art department, go ahead and ask, I guess, because that's basically the general idea of what it is for right now. But there is a lot planned.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, we're all excited to see the art department growing. I kind of had to start with the focus and kind of start with writers, but it's definitely our plans for over the course of 6 months of this year, really flesh out this art department and do a lot more for all of the artists they know are out there. I know Christy's really excited about doing all of that. All right, so we are going to jump. Well, actually, it looks like we just got a Christy come in. We just got a question for Christy come in about the art department. The question is, does the art department include book covers?
Book covers? It could potentially. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I will definitely keep that in mind for especially a lot of you who do both. So I'm not really sure about that just this moment, but I'll have to think on that.
All right, thank you. Next question, and I'm going to direct this to you, Deus, since this is on the writing journey plan. The question is, am I supposed to start right at the beginning of the thingy or at stage 2? I scored a 59 on the writing quiz. So if you score a 59 on the writing quiz, where would you recommend they come into the journey plan?
Okay. 59, right? 60 is to graduate to intermediate, right? Is that correct?
I think it's a 45 or 40. I think it's a 42. 42 that's required to. So it's once you're kind of hitting stage 3 and everything, the writing quiz is one of the requirements for graduation to stage 2.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, let me clarify. There's the writer's journey plan and there's the writer's score advancement plan, if I'm getting this right. So there's two separate things. The writer's journey plan is a very laid out map for you to go from start, I have no idea how to write a story at all, to finish. Well, we haven't got it quite finished yet, but it's going to take you hopefully all the way to very professional writer, successful writer, basically everything laid out. The writer's advancement plan is for people who are either they like to do things their own way, or they're don't know exactly where they fit in on the journey plan, and so this is a way for them to go, oh well, let's just work on plot now, and so they can work on plot. It's not as much of a roadmap per se as like a I don't know, how would you describe it? It's, there's not really an analogy coming to mind, but anyway, so if
it's kind of like a curriculum, maybe would be a good.
Yeah, it's more like a curriculum, I suppose. It's a pick and choose buffet. Anyways, so back to the initial question. If you got a 59, it sounds like you're kind of in the intermediate stage 2. So I would probably start around there. In fact, with stage 2, I would probably start at the very beginning of stage 2. Now, some of you maybe have gotten like a 34 score. And so I just want to address you too. The writer's journey plan, one of the things about that is that there's 3 sections. There's, let me get this, writing theory, writing practice, and platform. So writing theory is your understanding of good writing, writing concepts. Writing practice is getting experience, getting efficient, getting books written. And then writing platform is your following, the people who want to buy a book from you when you publish. And so if you've already been writing for a couple of years, probably you're at different spots for each of those 3 categories. So don't feel like you have to be at the same checkpoint for all 3 categories. You can be at checkpoint 16 for writing theory, checkpoint 3 for platform, and checkpoint 8 for writing practice. That's okay. So do that, and then it's really up to you where you want to start. If you're brand new, obviously start from the beginning, but if you've been writing for a while, I would probably choose the checkpoint you think you're about it, and then maybe start 1 or 2 before that, just to be safe. Hopefully that addresses the issue.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got a stream of questions back for you on the art department.
Mm-hmm.
So first question, could there be little workshops or something to help artists who draw super unrealistic art to draw more realistically?
Yeah, probably. I definitely want to have different like little tutorial things. So that will definitely be something that will happen in the future. Maybe even like some sort of videos or something where I can even help you work through certain techniques and stuff.
Great. Next question. We're just going to do these rapid fire. How do you feel about anime in the art department? Obviously not drawing anyone in books and movies and things.
I think I would be willing to accept it if you can tie it into some of the written portions that I have, is if you can tie it into some of those like deeper questions that I ask, which I know is hard to answer times. I'm still struggling through certain things in my own art, which is how does this play in with the redemptive story that God shows us? So I think if you can tie it in to that, I would definitely be willing to accept it.
All right, next question also on acceptance is what exactly do you accept in the art department? Do you mean drawing, painting on paper by hand, or does it also include internet designs?
Yeah, kind of anything. So if you mean like if internet designs, if you mean like digital art, I will definitely be willing to do digital art because that is another great medium to use.
All right, and last question for the art department right now is, will the art be a submission-based review process, or will there be a gallery people can post to?
It will be a submission-based review process, and then those that pass the review process, there's an online there's a little gallery where you can view those submissions.
Yeah, and in case you don't know how to access that gallery, if you go to storyembers.org/blog and you hit the little artwork thing on the top under categories, that'll bring you to our gallery page. It is small right now because we just started, but it will be growing rapidly and have lots of different great works of art there.
I want to see all of your submissions, so send them my way.
All right, so moving back into some of the writing questions. Let's see what we have here. How do you stay passionate about your story when you are 90,000 words in, have hit debilitating writer's block and doubts, and feel like you are wading through tarmac most of the time?
Oh my. I can actually go ahead and field that question because this is the first time I've announced that, but I actually wrote a script for a mini course on writer's block. So I can do my best. First thing I'll teach in that course is that there's actually 3 types of writer's block. There's a writer's block where you don't know what's going to happen. Let me see if I can remember the second one. Oh yeah, you know what's going to happen, but you don't like it. You feel like it's a dumb story and you don't care about it anymore. The third type of writer's block is where you like your story and you know what's going to happen, but you're staring in front of your computer and you'd much rather go do some mindless entertainment and sit down in a chair and do nothing. It's just hard to get the words on the page. And I think probably what we're dealing with here is part 2, where the story was really cool to start with, and then as she got into it, it wasn't as cool. But I'll touch the other 2 just briefly. So for the first one, you know, if you have, so there's plotters and pansters, and what I think is how you know if you're a plotter is if you do get caught up in the story and you can't get yourself out of it. If that's the case, you should really plot it. Pantsers are people who can fly by the seat of your pants. If you can't fly by the seat of your pants, just don't plot, okay? And then if you've got everything down, you love your story, but words just aren't coming out on the page. One solution is that you might be thinking about things too logically, too analytically, trying to be too perfectionist. What I really suggest is just kind of enter a daydreaming state. Just envision things in your mind, let the colors, the faces, you know, the scenery, the movements wash through your mind, and just do that for a very short period of time and then get writing, because that's really where, you know, because in that case, you're not creating something from nothing. You've got a picture of it in your mind, and now you just need to describe it accurately. That's all it is. So it's really impossible to get writer's block because you're just basically the scribe of the movie in your head. And then, you know, don't let yourself be too perfectionist. If you're trying to get everything perfect in your head before you start writing, you'll never get there. So just start. I even suggest just type gibberish. Okay, just type gibberish just to get your fingers to agree to type something, and then type 1 sentence, and then 2, and then keep going. But if you're dealing with the scenario where the story was sweet to start off with, and then it just went and dumb, you know, a lot of that will just improve with time. You study writing books, get critique from other authors, do everything you can to improve your craft. You know, read the best books out there you possibly can, study how they do it. And slowly over time, you'll get to the point where you really can't be bored because you're just so good. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm hoping to. And then, you know, besides that, I think plotting helps. If you're in the scenario where you just get bored, you know, knowing that there's something really cool coming up ahead can be very helpful. And then I think finally, the biggest problem is probably characterization. And You know what? I think it's a very good article, but I wrote it, so don't take my word for it. There's an article coming out on Story Embers, I think next week, that should, I hope, really help you with characterization. My goal with that article is to try to get to, what's the core of the character? What's the one thing you need to understand that's kind of the bedrock all the rest of the character is built on? So hopefully that will help you. Cliffhanger. Haha.
Yeah, it's going to be Monday's post, which also gets a podcast. So,
yeah,
either the podcast or the blog, check it out on Monday. And I'm now really hoping that's it, because I'm pretty sure that's Monday. If it's not this Monday, it's next one, but I'm pretty sure it's this one.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Next question I want to address is one that a lot of people are asking, which is, have you guys considered addressing playwriting or screenwriting at all? So I'll go ahead and take that. The answer is yes. We actually had a discussion about, it was a discussion about music last week. But this has come up before. The real short answer, yes, we have talked about it. We want to do stuff. We are not ready to really step into that yet. We want to make sure that when we're adding new kind of spheres of storytelling, that we are making sure we've got all of our current areas down really well before we move on to another. So right now we're really focused on, as we're have solidified, right, we're focusing around writing and art. Down the line, especially as we kind of really solidify the art department, this is something we've discussed, is something we would like to do. We're not there yet. What I will say is that, a lot of what makes for good fiction writing is the same thing as makes for what good screenwriting is. Actually, many of my favorite books on storytelling, books like The Anatomy of Story by John Truby, or just Story by Robert McKee, they're some of my favorite books as a novelist, and they were written by screenwriters. Because I think there's a whole lot of similarities between them. A lot of what it takes to write a good story is the same as what it takes to write a great screenplay. There are definitely differences. There is some specific things about screenwriting that we would eventually like to get into. We're not there yet, but my encouragement would be to use as much of what we have for fiction writers, because I think you'll find that a lot of it is as applicable as screenwriters. And it's definitely our hope that sometime down the line we could do a bit more as screenwriting. The next question. Then we're going to talk about the guilds after this next question. Deus can share with us all what are these awesome guilds we have been talking about. So the next question is, do you have any tips for writing realistic emotional and relational conflict if you are not an emotional person? I'll go ahead and take this. So I'm an INFJ, so I wouldn't qualify as not being an emotional person. But I have a couple of recommendations here. First recommendation is to look at how other people do it. I'm a big believer in the fact that to learn as a writer, you can't just read people talking about writing. You need to go to your favorite stories and you need to analyze them as a storyteller and look at what exactly are these writers doing. So my recommendation would be, the first thing I would do is to find a story that you like that is really, has a lot of emotional relational conflict, and just study that and think about what are they doing as a storyteller and how are they doing that well. Jane Austen is really good at this. She's one of my favorite authors. So if you're thinking about someone, Jane Austen is fantastic about this. There are many other writers who are really good at this as well. But I would first recommend finding an author who's good at it and study them and figure out what they're doing. And the more you read them and the more that you study them, I think you'll get better at that. My second recommendation would be, it's a book called The Emotion Thesaurus by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. And basically what it is it gives you, is for like 60 different emotions, it gives you about 60 different ways you can describe each of those emotions. So you've got thousands of different ways that you can use body language to describe emotions and to add a lot to emotional scenes. So that's not going to be the only thing you want, but it's really valuable. I'm generally writing with the Emotion Thesaurus right next to me because I find it so helpful of a resource. So I'd recommend checking that out. And then, my last recommendation on that front for writing realistic emotional relational conflict, if you're not an emotional person, is just to try to observe life. see how do other people around me, deal with relational, emotional conflict. What's it like for them? Because great storytelling mimics the real world. Great stories come from understanding what life looks like, and great stories depict life accurately. So the more you understand, the more you're thinking about, well, how do relational and emotional conflict happen in the real world, the better you're going to be at depicting that in your story. Anyone else have anything they want to add on to that?
Well, you mentioned the emotion thesaurus, so that reminded me of my show don't tell course. So yeah, people check out my course. Just saying.
Plug there for show don't tell. What is that?
Yep.
thescratchingquill.com/show don't tell.
I will post it in the chat for y'all.
All right, Dace is posting a link in the chat. You guys should check this out. If you want to know, what does it mean to show don't tell, which by the way is also one of the things on the quiz. So if you want to advance that and also learn how to do this, you should definitely check out Dace's show don't tell course because it's awesome. I'll answer a really quick question before we move on to the guilds. This is a submissions question asking, are you accepting submissions as of right now? If not, when? Yes, we are accepting submissions right now. Go to the contact page at the top of the screen. There's a drop-down menu that says submissions. Go through that, read through the submission guidelines, and then email us your submissions at submissions@storyembers.org because we would love to publish your stuff. And with that, I will hand the reins over to Dace to talk about the guilds. What the guilds are going to look like.
Okay. Well, just a little bit backstory. Josiah mentioned how we're starting Story Embers. One of the great things about that was just we were able to step back and view things from a sort of, I guess, omniscient perspective. Not omniscient. Like almost third person. What do you call it? Like, we're looking down on this from an outside perspective. We're able to see things clearly. We're not involved yet. We're just brainstorming what's going to be. So we had a lot of good perspective. And this is one of the things that came out of it. I'm really glad we were able to start from scratch because there was a lot of great brainstorming going on. So I don't know what actually inspired this. I think the idea is that we wanted to build a community that was a pretty serious community that was encouraging, accountability and growth and people being really serious with their craft, and also a lot of fun and constructive competition. And so somewhere along the line we mentioned the old-fashioned guilds with your shoemaker and your painter guild and all these guilds, and it's just a cool concept. And it evolved into what I'm going to share with you now, which is the Story Embers guilds. And we're having 3 guilds starting off with. And these are kind of subcategories within our form. So you will join a guild, just one guild, and that will be your guild you're part of. Then you will have your own sub-form where only people on your guild can interact. We hope there'll be some, more closer group stuff going on there, like maybe book clubs, prayer requests. There'll be some nice things to share just with your little group. And hopefully this will build some long-lasting, strong relationships. So kind of the structure of the guilds, we wanted to give each guild a little bit of autonomy, but there's going to be some similarities, which I'll talk about later. For now, each guild is run by a guild master. So far, I'm a guild master. We've got Brandon and Gabrielle from, you'll recognize them. They wrote stories, or no, not stories, articles for us at Kingdom Pen. The guild master is just kind of in charge of organization. And within each guild, you'll kind of have freedom to define a little bit about who you are and how you work. For instance, Brandon, he had the idea of having a, what do you call it, like a character lounge, where your guild has its own story world. And if you want to get to know one of your characters better, like I just mentioned with Story Embers, having that out of the box view of things really helped us create new ideas. Well, this is the same idea with characters. Take your character out of the story box, put it in this new crazy world, and maybe you can get to know them better. So it's kind of like, I guess, role playing with your character in this imaginary world. That was his idea. and that will make his guild unique. So each guild's going to be unique, but they're going to have similarities. Two of the big similarities is we're going to have competitions between the guilds. So a lot of ferocity and war and yes, competition. How this is going to work is there's two different wars we're going to have between the guilds. The first, which we're still working out a few of the finer details, but it's going to be basically a word war between the guilds. So every week you'll collect the number of words you've written, and then we'll compare it between the guilds to see who's on top of things the most. And it'll encourage you, hopefully, to stick to your writing more and really persevere for the honor of the guild, because you can't let the other guilds win. You know, that's wrong. Yeah. And the other war I'm pretty excited about is a story prompt competition. And I can see this really helping on the professional side of things. What we'll have is, I think probably every week, we haven't quite figured this out yet, but we'll have a story prompt. Like, for instance, describe a sunrise. And so each guild will get to create one submission for that story prompt competition. And so everybody is going to be working on one submission. The wonder of that is that there's going to be a lot of ironing, sharpening iron. You know, one thing I've seen is that every author has a strength. We all have weaknesses too. And so what I think is just going to come out of this is going to be so wonderful is you're just going to have this sharing of strengths and perception and ideas and genius that you're going to be able to snatch that from the people around you. You know, just take advantage of all the genius of your fellow writers and grow from that. You know, you don't write in a bubble if you study painting or if you study soccer. Whatever you do, you want to study from the people around you, the experts and your colleagues, and just learn what works for them. And this is going to be a great way for you to do that. Another thing we're going to have with the guilds is yearly themes. We don't have this quite picked out yet, but each guild is going to have a different theme that they're going to focus on for that year. And probably the guild masters will be creating weekly discussions, you know, just a forum thread, but they'll be more proactive about it and have some thoughtful questions. And probably a lot of those will align with the yearly theme that's being studied. So it'll kind of be a course for you, kind of your, I don't know, it'd kind of be like minoring in something, going through a yearly theme, I suppose, if you want to use that analogy. Let's see here. And then you'll have a say too next year when we pick new themes. You can help with that. We're going to be having new guilds come on in the future as we get more people joining on, and hopefully more competition coming out of that. Let's see. I know there's more. Oh yeah, so joining a guild. Now, correct me with this, Josiah, because I know we talked a lot about this, and I might get it wrong. But how I believe this works is, well, starting off, we're going to have about a week or two where you just get used to the form and learn about the different guilds, which one you would prefer to join. And then you can request to join a certain guild. Now, we don't guarantee that you will get the guild of your request, but we'll try to accommodate the best we can. We may also suggest a guild to you if we know people in there. We may say, hey, this is going to be best for your growth if you join Guild A. We really suggest you go to Guild A, and hopefully, you know, that will really benefit you with our kind of insider insight as to what would be the best match. But generally, you'll be able to pick the guild of your choice. Is that right, Josiah? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One thing I'll say to clarify here is, you know, as one of the things Deus brought up is you brought up is, you know, we're going to be bringing on new guilds, and part of the idea is that there is going to be a cap for how many people are in the guild, because part of the idea of this is that sometimes, you know, there's a really good benefit of really large writing forums, but there's also a benefit of having a close-knit community of individuals working together, and that's one of the things we're going for the guild. And so there's going to be a cap. I think the initial caps could be forget what we decided. Is it between like 20 and 30 people in the
Yeah,
guild?
about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so about 20 to 30 people in the guild. And at that point, once you get that number of people in the guild's going to be closed, and we're going to open a new guild. So there's going to be some factors there in that it's what, the guilds you choose is going to be determined by, well, what guilds are currently opened. And I think, and yeah, there's still some of the details they were figuring out, but you'll be able to have a say in which guild you prefer to be a part of. I don't think we are guaranteeing that you can necessarily get into the guild that you want, but it won't be random. Yeah, Dez, did you want to add anything else onto that?
I don't think to that specifically. I'm trying to think. I think there's a little bit more to the guilds. We want this to partly be something you create, that you decide how you want the guilds to be. I mentioned with the autonomy in the guilds, each of them can be a little different. But if you think of new ways to create competition between the guilds, or whatever you think of, we're willing to listen and just create this into the best environment it can be. Now I'm just trying to think if I missed anything, because we have a couple ideas laid out. I covered the competitions, covered the yearly themes, weekly discussions by the guild masters. Probably going to happen. Oh, hopefully we're planning to, I think, eventually get home pages for each of the guilds where they can have their little fantasy histories of how they got started and their politics and their fame quotes and emblems and flags and all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And when you guys are all like 60, you're going to remember your guild. Like,
back in my day.
Yeah. The hope is that this can be something you stick with for life. It's not going to grow old. It's always going to keep pushing you. Oh, another thing. Yeah, I forgot to mention this. If you've looked through the writer's journey plan, you've probably seen that, especially in the area of platform. Can I turn this on? Especially in the area of platform, we encourage you to create a sort of small group for accountability. So that's one of the things we're not requiring, but we're really encouraging that these guilds be a source of accountability to you. I know I started a Facebook group recently for a couple friends who are trying to build their writing platforms. And each week we list new goals for the week that we want to accomplish, and then how well we did with last week's goals. So you can do something like that within your guilds, just keeping accountable with writing habits, writing platform. You can do book clubs. This is just kind of your go-to small group.
And one other, I know there's been a bunch of questions in the chat box. It looks like Brandon, as the Store Embers account, has been able to answer on that. One thing I know several of you are asking of, well, when are these guilds going to start? They'll be starting within the next 2 weeks. They may be started as early as next week, late next week. It may be 2 weeks. We're still pulling everything we need to get on it. But if you are hearing all this, you're like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. I want to join these cool guild things. Well, you can pre-register for the guilds. If you go to storyembers.org/guilds, you'll see that we now have a very simple, brief sign-up page. You just say, what your name is, email address, who you are as a writer, what you want your username to be. So you can pre-register for that, so that the moment the guilds are up, you can join. And like Daya said, we won't. There'll probably be after the forum starts. There'll be kind of a week before the guilds start, because we want to give you an opportunity to get to know each other, figure out what guild you may be interested in before the guilds officially launch from that forum. Now the guilds are going to be the primary part of the forum, but they'll be starting. There'll be games started in the next 2 weeks. If you're interested, just head on over there and put your information, and you will be the first to know and first to be able to join the forum and the guilds once those are up.
Oh, one more comment is that you don't have to join a guild. We really recommend it, but if you just want to hang around the forum and not be part of a guild, that's okay. Though the reason why we encourage being part of this guild is because we really think they're going to be great for accountability, great for honing your skills, getting that competitive spirit. And we just want to create a more professional atmosphere, a more enthusiastic atmosphere, because we don't want you to be huddled up on your desk typing stories that never get better, that never get seen. We want you to be doing the very best you can. So that atmosphere is important to us. So go join the guild. Highly recommend it, but it's not necessary.
All right. So it's not 3 o'clock, but I know there's a bunch of writing questions we got. I do want to be able to answer. So I think we'll go to 3:15 and answer as many more questions as we can in that time. So we'll be starting with the question that had been asked, but continue to keep them coming. Really quick question. I'll start off by answering. When does the podcast get released on iTunes? Monday. Monday, the podcast page, we've got our second podcast episode. It will be up on iTunes. We've got an approval for that on iTunes. You'll be getting an email about that as well. But Monday, we will have the podcast up on iTunes. All right. Next question. Let me scroll back. All right. This is an interesting one. Is there a good way to approach a poorly written writing project that you haven't been working on for a long time? I'll start off by answering. I both have and haven't done this before. I've approached things I've kind of just left on the back burner for months because it didn't work. I haven't done the years part yet, but I have done this some. I'd say my advice would be, you need to begin by taking an assessment of it and by deciding how you want to and the biggest thing you need to figure out is, am I going to just revise and continue, or do I need to do a complete rewrite? My guess, if you haven't approached this for a while and it's poorly written, you're probably best just rewriting the whole story. I know that takes a while. I did this once with a couple years ago. I had this 100,000 word fantasy novel. I decided so many problems I was going to rewrite it. And that took a while, but it was much better for having rewritten it. So I'd say if you haven't working on it for a while, it's poorly written, probably your best bet is there's a good chance to rewrite it, but it kind of depends on the specific details and how much you need to fix on it. Yeah, that may be worth talking with a friend who knows a bit more about the project, because that's the sort of thing that's hard for me to say or advise much on, kind of just in general. Deus, did you have any thoughts on that?
Maybe just one or two. I mean, I'm thinking one story I wrote, I think it was 2 years ago. It's one of my first projects, and I thought it was good at the time, but it was not good. And it's only been 2 years since then, but going back, yeah, I don't think I could revise it. I would just have to start over from scratch. I think that's going to be the case with most people. I really wouldn't try to revise it. I would probably, if you want to publish it, if you want to stretch yourself, rewriting is a really stretching exercise that's good for you. Just rewrite it. It's tough, but it's really the best option.
Yeah. All right. Time management question. How do you recommend splinting? I think he means splitting your time between writing, the guilds, and our lives.
Oh no.
Deus, do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, of course, it's a matter of priority. I think it's mainly going to be a fight between your writing and your life. I'd say if it's between writing and the guild, your writing is more important than the guild. The guild's purpose is to help your writing. If the writing is not there, the guild's just another cool community, which is fine, but it's not the main purpose. So, I don't know what your life is like, what priorities you have. Definitely pray about it and ask for counsel. But a note when you ask for counsel is, if somebody tells you being a writer is a waste of time, definitely take that with a little bit of skepticism. but not everybody needs to be a full-time writer. That's fine. But I would say, if at all possible, try to write, at least 10 minutes to half an hour a day. Try to do a little bit a day. And if you can write at least an hour, that's even better.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to expand on one of the things Dea said. Wei said that it shouldn't be a war between the guilds in your writing. One of the things we're being really intentional with is one of our goals with these guilds is that it is a tool for you to become a better writer, and that it doesn't become a distraction from your writing.
Right.
As we were discussing, what does our community look like here? There are a number of possibilities that we discussed. Possibilities like, do we have an off-topic forum? Do we have a more permanent live chat? There are a number of things we discussed that we thought that might bring potentially more people to the site, which we decided that we didn't think it would actually help them as writers. If you have an off-topic forum, if you have a permanent chat, we're like, all right, I don't think I could really recommend this for writing because I feel like this may get more people on our site, but it's not going to help them become better storytellers. And so we decided we were not going to do that because we only want to be giving you things that will actually help you become better storytellers. And so one of our goals with these guilds is we do not want it to become a place you waste your time on. If you're choosing to do the guilds over writing, well, then someone has failed. Either we have failed to craft guilds that are going to actually help you become storytellers, or you're failing yourself by allowing yourself to become distracted by them. So one of our goals with the guilds is we don't just want this to become another place you can spend time. We want the guild to be something that by participating in the guilds with other writers, you are becoming a better storyteller. And so it may take us a couple tries and trying out a couple things to figure out how do we best create guilds that people enjoy being at, that give them good community, but they also help them with their writing. That is one of the things that we want to be really intentional about, is making something that helps you as a writer and just doesn't become the next thing that's going to distract you from writing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next question. Give me one moment. All right, is it okay to have your story kind of random, as in for characters, plots, and events? I'll start off by addressing this. I'd say you don't want your story random, but you do want it surprising. You don't want the reader to feel like you are going through this without a plan. Now, you don't necessarily need a plan. You can discovery outline the whole thing, but you want everything in your story, by the time your story is finished, revised, polished, you want everything to be intentional. Now, you do want some surprising developments, and part of it depends on your story. So, some authors, like say Lewis Carroll, author of Alice in Wonderland, he thrives on the fact that the story is randomness. So if it's your specific style that's random, and that's really hard to do. But if you can do that really well, it can work. But otherwise, I'd say you don't want your story random, but you do want it surprising. I'd say the most important thing is to make sure your writing is intentional. As long as your stories are intentional, as long as you're intentionally choosing characters, plots, and events, it may seem random at points. It may feel kind of random. I'd say, is it okay to have your story kind of random? I'd say I wouldn't. It depends on if your story is intentional and if you know what you're doing. If you can be both intentional and random, like Lewis Carroll was, fantastic. But I'd say you want to make sure you're being intentional as a storyteller and not only random. Diz, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
I suppose so. I'm actually thinking to some of the, I guess they call it copy for literature on the Kingdom Pen forum, which is, if you don't know what that is, on the Kingdom Pen forum, some people would write some stories with the people on the forum as characters. And that could be really random at times, with crazy creatures and all sorts of fantastical, weird stuff going on. But like, I'm thinking of one, Deck Real Dead, and there was, even though there was a bunch of craziness in it, there was a cohesion to it too, because of I guess you could say, the theme of it. I guess the theme would be like fitting in a new place, serving others. There's a throbbing heart behind your story. You got to think, what is it about this story that really matters? When somebody leaves this book, is it just going to be cool? What is it that really matters? And when you understand that, I think a lot of crazy elements can connect back to that throbbing heart. And if you can do that, you're at least pretty well off.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Is Story Ember something that my 50-something very interested but somewhat rusty at writing mother would be able to participate in? The answer is yes, absolutely. One of the things for Story Embers is designed for storytellers of all ages, because we think there's a lot of benefit of people, of Christian writers, from storytellers of all ages getting together and learning from each other. And sometimes and being able to get different perspectives on things. Even if we've got a 17-year-old writer and a 35-year-old writer, and let's say both of them are at the same place in the writing rank score, so both of them are kind of at a similar stage in their writing journeys, I think there's a lot that they can learn from each other, just because of the difference of age, the difference of experience. There's a bunch, and that's one of the things that we'd love to cultivate here is an atmosphere of older writers being able to learn from younger writers, even if they're at the same level, and to get some of that. So that's the answer is yes. That's one of the things we're trying to push for. And so I don't know if your mother specifically would be interested, but our hope is that we're trying to design stuff for storytellers of all ages here. So yes. All right, so we're going to take 2 more questions. I know we will not be able to get to all the questions. So if you had a question that's not going to get answered, you've got 2 opportunities. One opportunity is that within the next couple months, we should be having another panel discussion, and we will be trying to bring on some really cool authors for that. So maybe you'll be able to save it for that. The other option is one of the things that we will be doing in our newsletters. In each newsletter, we will be asking a random writing question. So if you have a question that doesn't get answered, our first newsletter is going to be going out next Wednesday. There's going to be a spot in it where that's going to direct you to how you can ask us your writing questions and get an answer within the newsletter. And those newsletters will be going out every other week at first. And so if you want other opportunities to get your questions answered, keep your eyes on your inboxes for that. All right. All right, 2 last questions for today. First question. I have great characters and worlds, but often don't know what should happen to them. In other words, plotting is difficult. Help?
I love the dryness of that question. It's like squashing me.
I can take this one first. I would say one of the things that we have in our resource library. So if you go up to the top of the screen, you say resources. You're gonna just put your name and email in to get access. But one of the things we have there is a 3-act plot structure. So I'd say the first thing to do is I would recommend looking at different kinds of plot structure, and thinking about that. Here's the basis of plot. The basis of plot is a character wants something. So there's a character. They have something they want, and there is something in their way. And all a plot is a character overcoming obstacles to get what they want. And so I'd begin by figure out what does your character want by the end of the story, and what's going to stand in his way. And then I'd recommend that you get that 3-act plot sheet, and you use the 3-act plot sheet to determine how to structure your story based on that, and how you're going to go through the different obstacles that are in the character's way. Now, there are many different ways of applying stories. The 3-act plot structure is just one of them, but it's a very general one that works for most stories. I use a 3-act plot structure. I'd highly recommend it. So my recommendation would be figure out what your character wants, figure out what's in his way, and use a 3-act plot structure. You use additional resources for this. A book like K.M. Weiland's Structuring Your Novel is a fantastic book. That I would highly recommend if you want to take your understanding of plot to the next level. So figure out what your character wants, figure out what stands in his way, use plot structures to develop and flesh that out. Liz, do you want to jump anything onto that?
Yeah, I actually had a couple ideas on this. The first idea is plot structure is definitely vital, whether you do it at the start or after you've already written the novel. But as far as just getting inspiration ideas, just one of the things that's been really helpful for me is when I'm reading a book, I look for two things that help me writing my own book. I look for something that's done really well, and how can I copy that? So, for instance, when I was reading The Lord of the Rings like a year ago, I saw that, hey, there's a lot of travel in this book, and that travel could have got kind of boring, but it didn't because of, I think, one main ingredient, and that was Golem, because Golem was the untrustworthy guide. So everything was kind of normal for maybe several pages, but any moment Golem could do something dramatic, and so there was always that tension in the background. And so I thought, hey, I actually haven't done this yet, but at some point I'm going to include an untrustworthy guide in my novel, because I thought, hey, that's great. Now he's not going to look and act exactly like Golem, but it's the same idea. It was the inspiration coming from The Lord of the Rings. The other thing is, what do I see in this book that I don't like, and how would I do it differently? And often, once you get that basic idea, it evolves into something really unique that you can use for your own story. So actually, from The Lord of the Rings as well, I got actually the inspiration for the novel I'm writing now. The ending for The Lord of the Rings is pretty good, especially with Mount Doom. But it kind of stretches on after that. I like the ending, but I thought it could have been a little bit better. So I thought, hey, how would I write the ending to The Lord of the Rings? How would it be different? And I got the idea, and then it just really evolved, and it turned into something totally new. So analyze books for what's really well done and what you would do differently, and that can give you some really great plot ideas. Let's see, I had two other things to talk about. Let's see if I can remember. Just a moment. I don't remember. Okay, so let's see. Two other things. I talked about inspiration. Okay, yeah. One thing Charles Dickens is kind of famous for is reusing characters, and some people kind of think it's overdone, but I really like it. You'll notice that person who shows up in chapter 1 also shows up in chapter 18 and chapter 32. And what's great about that is there's forcing yourself to do that can kind of create some plot twist that you weren't expecting. Just how do I fit this character back into the story? I think it stretches your mind, and it gives a lot of cohesion to the plot to have the same characters reappearing over and over again. So reuse and recycle is what I would say. Remember that. Be green with your story. One other thing. This is going to drive me crazy if I don't get it. Reuse characters. Inspiration. Potential. Oh boy, I should have written this down. Reuse character.
That's the worst moment.
I know. You can go ahead if you want. I'll just
Okay.
keep thinking about it.
All right. So we've got one more question to take, but I'll take a really quick intermediate question. It doesn't count for the last question.
Okay.
Someone asked, where do you subscribe to the newsletter? The newsletter is going out to everyone on the mailing list. So if you are at this panel discussion, you are already on our mailing list, presumably, unless you found a backtrack door here, in which case, congratulations. But yeah, just as long as you sign up for a mailing list, you'll get the newsletter. So where do you, like, there are tons of different places. Like if you take the quiz, you'll be signed up for a mailing list. Go to the resource library, you'll be signed up for a mailing list. On the StoryEmbers/blog, you can specifically sign up for the newsletter, but anyone who's on the mailing list will get the newsletter. So you should already be on there. If not, just go to one of those three places and sign up. All right. So our last question we're going to take is how to how do you use your own writing style and voice when writing well? It's a very good question. Writing style and voice is one of the hardest things, in my opinion, to get, but it's one of the most important. I'll give my answer, and then Deus, if you want to give your answer, and maybe quickly answer the last one. I'd say, how do you know, part of this is involved, well, how do you find your writing style and voice? I know personally, it took me a very long time to figure out what my writing style and voice is. It was only a year ago. This was after writing for, I don't know, for 10 plus years that I really figured out what my writing style and writing voice was. It was when I was revising of my manuscript. So for me, it took a long time. There's a long time where I worried that I didn't have a real writing style and voice. Eventually realized I did. It just took me a while to recognize it. So part of the question here is, do you know what your writing style and your writing voice is? And if you're in the camp that you don't know your writing style, your writing voice, my best encouragement will just be to keep writing, because eventually you'll find, and what you'll probably realize is that you've had a writing style voice all along. It's just take you a bit to recognize it. So the first step is just to write a lot. And sometimes when you're just reading, you'll realize what your writing voice is when you realize what author styles you really like and which you don't like so much. So begin by just writing a lot to understand your writing style and writing voice. And then once you realize what your writing style is and what your writing voice is, in my mind, it's largely just revision. It's remembering, here's my voice, and it's just a matter of cutting all the stylistic bits of your story that don't add to that voice and just leaving those in that really bring out your voice. So it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of revision to both find it and then revise your story to match what you're going for. Deus, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this is actually an interesting question because it's something I'm still exploring, but just been thinking about recently. If you would have asked me probably, I don't know, 2 months ago to describe my writing voice, I probably would have had no idea what to say. And so that bothered me when I realized that. And so what I just did is I asked a friend, hey, what is my writing voice? I have no idea. Tell me. And so she answered back. And then what I'm planning to do now in the future is just, maybe not every book I write, but at least the next few books I write, every beta reader I have, ask them, what's my writing voice? What's the consistent theme and how I word things, how it feels to you. And it was helpful for me getting some feedback on what is my writing voice. I just feel like I have a better grip on what makes me unique. And I think I can foster that a little bit better now that I can actually analyze it and know, oh, this is actually who I am. This is what I do. So yeah, ask for feedback. And then, it's okay if your writing voice changes a little bit. And probably, especially if you're in your first year of writing, that's definitely going to be the case. My writing voice was horrible initially, but now it's better. And hopefully it'll keep getting better. And, definitely study the best people you can, because you're going to get inspiration from them, copy them to some degree. So study good authors.
Yeah.
And I can't remember my third point about plot. It's maybe it's just not meant to be.
It's not meant to be.
Or maybe it's another cliffhanger.
Always love giving those cliffhangers, not only in stories, but in the panel discussions. All right. Well, at this point, we are 23 minutes over what I initially said at the end. But thank you all for coming out. It's been really great to launch this week. It's been really great to hear from all of you, get the opportunity here to hang out with you some more, answer your questions. Like I said, we've got some big things planned. A lot of different things we want to do to help storytellers here. So keep in touch. We will have new posts going up every Monday and Thursday. Mondays are going to be writing articles. Thursdays are going to be either a story or a poem or an artwork or something that's showing what a great story looks like, whether it's in the verbal or the visual forms. And Monday's gonna be training how to work as a storyteller. So check us out every Monday and Thursday. Got the podcast, got the articles. We're gonna have another one of these panel discussions in a couple months with some really cool published authors. We don't know who they are yet. We're gonna find some cool people to bring on for all of you and do that. And yeah, if you have any And yeah, we've got our email accounts. If there are any pressing questions you have about who we are and what we're doing here, so if there are any questions you had on what we're specifically doing at Story Embers that you were not able to get to, feel free to email us at info@storyembers.org, and we will respond as quickly as possible. And otherwise, thanks so much for coming out, and I hope you have a great rest of your days.
Yeah, see you all. Thanks for coming.